Good evening, my name is Prashant Gupta. Today, in this video, I will teach you, I will share how I will share. Uh, Today, I'm making this video on one of the most important interview question which each and every interviewer in their interviews normally ask, and that is on encapsulation. The topic is on encapsulation. Encapsulation is a oops concept, is one of the oops concept. In oops concept there are inheritance, encapsulation, abstraction, and polymorphism, classes, objects. In Java these are coming in oops concept. So oops concept, by the way, oops concept is one of the most important interview topic, सबसे important hot topic which each and every interviewer focus on. So one of the most interview one of the most important interview one of the most important topic in oops concept is encapsulation. So I'm dividing this video in two parts. First, uh, first in first part, in a first half, I'm dividing this video in two halves. In first half, I will tell you, I will teach, or I will share how to answer that interview question. How to answer that interview question, which is on, which might be interviewer will, which make sure interviewer will ask you what is encapsulation. So how to answer that question first of all in a theoretical manner. Then in a second half I will teach you, right after I will teach you how you can show or how you can show as a example in a practical manner, how you can practically demonstrate that same topic in front of interviewer. So before wasting any further time, let's get started. So firstly, what is the correct definition to be tell in interview? That should be that would be this. So before starting my definition, I want to give one pro tip, that is you have to, whenever you will tell your answer in a interview, um, or whenever you are trying to tell your answer in an interview, make sure your whole reply or definition would be in bullet points, in a points, so that will give you a structure to show your answer, or to show your answer, right? So points always gives a structure how to answer that in a well format. So, and you will not, and second most important point is, you will not you will not hesitate, and you will flawlessly tell your answer. So always tell your answer, share your answer in a bullet points. uh, so first, so I will do same in this video. I will share this answer, the same answer, in bullet points. How I can do is, starting, what is encapsulation? Encapsulation refers to the bundling of data with the methods that operates on the data. That is my first point. Encapsulation refers to the bundling of data with the methods that operates on the data. Second point, here in encapsulation we restrict direct accessing to the variable or a data by making them private, by making them variable or data private. And third point, in a case if we want to interact with that same data or a variable, we have to publicly define getters and setters method for that. So these are my 3 points to simply define what is encapsulation is all about. I will share each and every point in a brief manner with the practical demonstration in front of you how what I am actually trying to say. Encapsulation refers to the bundling of data with the methods. Encapsulation refers to the bundling of data with the methods that operates on the data. The most important thing is here data is what? Data is a variable. In encapsulation, we cannot directly interact with the variable. Especially in encapsulation. If we are performing encapsulation, so if we are applying encapsulation concept in our program. So in a program we make variable we make a variable make sure we make a variable, and in that variable what we will make, we will not make that variable to be interact with anybody. We have to make that variable private. A private access is private is an access specifier here, so we have to make a variable private so that we cannot interact, so no one can interact with that variable. Here data is a variable. So with the practical demonstration, here is an encapsulation. You will see encapsulation java slash underscore java. I will create two classes here. First I will create class A, right? Okay, I will type is already exists, so I will name a class as capital E. I will create two classes. First is E and second one is and another class I will create another class that will be class F. These are my two classes. First is E, second one is F, and in that F I will create one main method. Because so by the way, this class is a parent class. Sorry, this is not a parent class, sorry. By the way, I have created two classes. So what I will do here is, while applying encapsulation concept in our programs, we have to create a variable, a private. We always create a variable, a private variable. So I will create a variable private. I will just write private access specifier and I will write in X, or I will create here int id also. id is my variable name. id is what? id is here, id is a variable or a data which I am hiding for someone, I'm hiding. How I am hiding this variable or a data? By not initializing it, right? By not initializing it. So this is a private variable. So so my first point is encapsulation refers to the bundling of data. So bundling of data means as same as I made one variable private. There are so many variables out there, and there are so many variables will out there you can use. So this will be your bundling of data, and with the methods. What is the method? So what is that point is all about? If you are creating a variable as a private, here what you are telling that I cannot allow this data or a variable to be interact with anybody. So that is why I'm creating this variable. I'm creating this variable of privates. Here what you are doing, you are restricting this variable or data to be to not be interactive with someone, to not interact with anyone. So but in encapsulation, you will see the first point, encapsulation refers to the bundling of data with the methods. So you can only, if you want to interact with data, if you want that this data can be interacted with someone, so whom will interact this data or a variable. In encapsulation, if you are performing encapsulation or if you are in your programs, only methods can be methods can interact with that variable or a data. This is a data or a variable, or you can say variable. This data or a variable can be interacted by only methods and methods and methods. No one can interact that data except method or methods can interact with that variable or a data. So those methods are publicly defined, and we can call as getters and setters method. So only the method can interact with data. So how you can create getters and setters, just you will go with source, and here you can publicly define getters and setters. Here you can see firstly how you can, now the point is how you can create the methods getters and setters. Just you need to do two simple steps. First you need to do a right click. After that you will go source, right? You will go on a source, right? You will go on a source. After that, second step, you will search here generate getters and setters. You will find getters and setters, just click on that and you will create this data. You can show this, you can see this data here. This is your data or a variable which you are hiding right now, or which you cannot allow to be interacted with someone. But in encapsulation only methods can interact with that variable or data. So here what you will do after that, two simple steps. After that you will click on this id or whatever you will give a name to your variable or data. You will click on that, and after that you will click on generate. So here you have publicly defined getters and setters. So after that what you will do is you will here what we are doing here, we are initializing this variable by publicly defining getters and setters method. These are nothing but a methods. Getters and setters are methods. These are a methods. And if you in encapsulation, I'm repeating again, in encapsulation, if you want that this variable or data can be interacted by someone, so only this data or variable can be interacted by publicly defining. Here I am using this public means access specifier, by publicly defining getters and setters. So these getters and setters are what methods. So in this program I want to initialize this variable. I want to set the value into this variable, or I want to give this variable a value. In a simple layman terms, if I would say I want to give this variable a value, how I can give, or in a technical terms I would say how would I initialize this variable or data. what I will do is I will set the data. I will set, I want to set the data. In the pro tip I want to give you as a developer, if you are writing a program, your whatever you will write in your program, a variable, a methods, or a variables, or you will declare a couple of variables, or you will define methods or constructors, whatever, or creating an object, you will create an object, whatever you will write in your program, you you have to remember one thing: your each and every thing should be meaningful. Meaningful means here I am performing encapsulation. So here I gave the variable called as id, name as a id. Here I am defining set, I am initializing this variable a value. So I'm writing here a method name called as set, because I'm setting a value to this variable. And right, and after that, so in this program what I will do is I firstly I will initialize this variable. That is why I'm setting, gave a name as set id. Set is a method name and id is a variable name. And after that, second point what I will do, I will create, I will read that value, I will read that value. So firstly I will initialize this value, I will initialize this value, and then second point I will read this, I will read that value, I will read that value just to check that this value is properly initialized or not, right? So first point I will successfully do, I will I will what, initialize this value. How will I initialize this value? Just perf- uh, calling this method, just calling set method. So how I can call this method? How in Java the methods is called? By creating an object. By creating an object, you can call a method, constructor. You can access a variables by creating an object. So here a second class, I why I created a second class, just to, I can create a main method inside the same class, and I can do this, I can perform this program, or I can run this program like that also, by writing the same by writing the method and a main method inside the same class. But why I am creating other class? Because I don't want to I don't want to खिचड़ी नहीं पकाना चाहता मैं एक प्रोग्राम में, सिंपल रखना चाहता हूँ. दैट इज वाई एज अ डेवलपर आई वुड गिव यू वन मोर टिप. while writing a program, you have to make sure, you have to remember that your program should be more readable, and more clearly visible, more meaningful, and more you know readable, and and your program should not be confusing. It should be more clearly visible and clear. That is why, just to make this program clear, I'm creating two classes here. So in this f class, I will create an object just to call this method. How will I do this? Just to call this method, how can I call this method? By his name. So firstly I will create one object will be ff1. I'm not inheriting, so I will so मैं किस क्लास का ऑब्जेक्ट बना रहा हूँ यहाँ पे? मैं बना रहा हूँ ई क्लास का ऑब्जेक्ट, बिकॉज आई एम नॉट performing inheritance here. So that is why I will not create an object for this class, because I am not inheriting the members of this class in this class. F class. I'm not inheriting the members of this class in this F class. I'm not inheriting the member of E class in this F class. That is why I'm not performing inheritance. I'm just want to initialize this variable or a data value. So what I will do here is I will uh, create an object for this E class. So I will write E, the object is E1 is equal to E, and then I will create one E1 dot. So I will call a method by its name. So the name is set id. Set id. Set id. Here the method has some argument, so I have to create an object which has some argument, which has at least one argument, because in this method which I'm calling, in this method there is one argument here. This is one value which I want to pass, because this is a method which has one argument or a value in it. That is why I want to pass a value here. Even dot I will create 100. I will give this 100. So with the help of this I will call this method. So I have created one object for this method, and after that, the very next line, I called this particular method. So the method is called. Here the most important point is, if you will not, because only if you are calling the method, the two ways to call a method. First is the method. If the method, to call a method, there are two ways of two types of method. One is without argument method, and second one is argument method. If some method has some argument, if one method has some argument, so you have to pass a value while calling this method. If you are calling this method by creating an object, you have to, while calling this method, you should have to supply the value, because this method has some argument. Second thing, if you are creating one method called same method, public void set id, right, set id, and if you will see, there is no argument here, so you have to create one object here which has no argument, so firstly you will create this you will create a for this method object, and after that, when you will call this method, make sure you will call this method by giving no value, by supplying no value, because this method has no argument. So the conclusion is, if the method has some argument, so you have to supply the value. If the method has no argument, you don't have to supply the value in an object. So that is why. And after that, so this method will call, so this object will call this method. Here I supplied 100, so this 100 will go in this method. This 100 will go in this int id, and after that, int id, this object and method will match. After that, this 100 will come inside in this block of code. This is called as a block of code, and this always executes. After that, this line will execute. How this line will execute? 100 will come inside. This 100 will put into this id, and after that, this will supply this 100 to this id. Firstly, this 100 will give to this id, then this 100 will come inside, this 100, then again the 100 will give to this id, and then 100 will give to this dot id. Now the 100 किसके पास है? this dot id के पास. Now what is this keyword? This keyword, I explained this keyword in a previous video, but now this keyword in this program, in encapsulation, while performing or while performing encapsulation, this keyword is playing their different role, playing their different role. This keyword is different. This keyword is different from previous this keyword. Why this keyword is different now? In encapsulation, this keyword is directly referring this value to this id. This keyword is directly referring the value, this keyword is directly referring this variable data. So whatever value I supplied to this to id, this keyword, with the help of this keyword, this 100 will directly refer to this id, immediately refer to this variable or id, and that is how we practically initialize this variable, this private variable or data, without interacting with anyone. I haven't मैंने इस वेरिएबल के लिए कोई ऑब्जेक्ट नहीं बनाया जिससे कि मैं इस वेरिएबल को एक्सेस कर सकूं. मैंने कोई ऑब्जेक्ट नहीं बनाया. विदाउट क्रिएटिंग एन ऑब्जेक्ट फॉर दिस वेरिएबल, आई इनिशियलाइज्ड दिस वेरिएबल अ डेटा or variable a value. So id successfully initialized a variable. I successfully initialized 100 in this id. Now if we want to read this variable, whether whether the value will whether the value will is inside this variable or not, just for we will read this value. So reading comes into the picture. So first of all, I have to firstly, reading this value, I have to return this. I have to take the value from id, और I have to take the value from id. रिटर्न मुझे वैल्यू id से लेनी पड़ेगी इसको रीड करने से पहले. सो हाउ विल आई रीड दिस वैल्यू? जस्ट टू रिटर्न दिस वैल्यू, just to return this value. So just to return this value, I will read. Just to return this value, I will read this value. Just to return this, firstly, if I want to read this value, I have to return this value. So how in Java? So how can I return this value? How can I return means how can I take this value? How object can take this value from id? So firstly, if object wants to take this value from id, which is already initialized 100 into this, I have to call this get id method. I have to call this get id method. How can I call this get id method? I have to create one more object and call this method. Even same e2. Firstly, I will create one object for this e1 e2. Now e2 is equals to new e. After that, e2 dot get id now e2 dot get id. getters and setters. Set ID, get ID 100. Yeah, yes. So if I want to get this ID, so now the object will call this method, and this will return this value to object, and this will the method will call this method to take the value from ID. After that, calling this method, here is a return keyword. What this return keyword will do, return keyword will return that value which I initialized for in this ID to object, return back to the object. And here the value object के पास आ चुकी है. Now उस value को मेरे को कहीं ना कहीं I have to store that value in a temporary variable. So I will create one int value kind of temporary variable, and after that right, but this is giving me error. Get id no. क्रिएटेड वन ऑब्जेक्ट है, क्या प्रॉब्लम आ गई भाई? even dot get id and even dot get id, and this will store in this int val okay. If I will do in other terms, if I will not create this f class, and only in this, if I will create one main method, in this main method, firstly I will call one set id method. Same I'm writing here, um, even dot set id I will give is 100, then e2 dot get id. हाँ अरे बामे से निकल जाओ।